Hey guys, Dr. Bodle here. And no matter what strategies or changes you're planning on implementing to help improve your Hashimoto's symptoms, your next thought is probably, how long is it going to take until I start feeling better? Now, as per usual, there isn't one answer to this question. But by the end of this video, you'll have a much better idea of the overall concept of progress with autoimmunity. That way you can apply it to your particular situation and have more consistent success. And remember, if you find this kind of information useful, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell for new videos every Thursday. Thanks so much. I really do appreciate the support. Now, most of the time when we have some sort of injury or health problem, we're given a time frame for recovery. So if someone has a significant ankle sprain, they might be told, well, your recovery for the ankle sprain is going to be about 4 to 6 weeks. This works well because usually those time frames are on a scale that's easy for our brain to understand. The problem is, with Hashimoto's and other autoimmune conditions, they're so chronic in nature, both in the way that it develops within our body, but also in the time that it takes for us to get diagnosed, that it really changes the way we have to approach things, and it also changes that timeline for recovery. So although your ankle might start feeling better in just a few days with some ice and rest, if we make changes for only a few days to try to improve our Hashimoto's, we're typically not going to get a lot of feedback or see much change. Well, I think a lot of people understand that if I've had something for years, it's going to take me some time to start getting it better. When we don't see much of a response to the changes that we're implementing, it can, one, be very frustrating. If we're going to put in effort to try to make something better, we want to get something out of it. But additionally, it can be pretty scary. We want to be doing the right things. And sometimes that can be hard to know if we're trying to figure this out on our own and we're not getting a lot of feedback from our body. Plus, if we don't have a good idea on how long it's going to take to start seeing a response, then I know a lot of people can be fearful of the fact that they might be doing the wrong thing for months on end and that time is now wasted. Or even worse, they're doing something that isn't a good fit for their body and is actively working against their condition. So now, not only have we wasted our time, but we've also exacerbated our symptoms and potentially negatively affected our labs. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people can get trapped in these kinds of situations because there are practitioners out there who are giving people 6 or 12-month care plans. When we frame things in that manner, it makes us think, well, I'm probably not going to see much improvements until I get closer to the end of that time period. And while I do think our long-term journey should be framed more on a scale of months and years, I believe that if we're doing the right things for our body, the changes and improvements that we can see should happen much sooner. In fact, when I'm working with patients, I'm really thinking about things in 30-day intervals. As I said before, if we're providing our body with the right kind of support, then that's more than enough time to see a change. And there may be little signs or differences that we can pick up if we're looking for the right things that'll be happening before then. But with autoimmunity, because things can be slow to progress, it is hard to see differences on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. And sometimes we might have little flare-ups or exacerbations that can make us feel like things are going wrong, but when compared to the big picture, that month scale that we're looking at, it ends up being more of a blip rather than a true trend. But if we do commit to making changes and invest ourselves in the process, then I think 30 days is enough. If we're not seeing any noticeable differences, well, then we might want to adjust and try a different approach. But if we are seeing improvements, and when we compare ourselves to how we were feeling 30 days ago, and it's clear that there is a difference, then that's great feedback and a sign that we can continue to leverage these strategies. If we can make changes and feel better in 30 days, then that always gets me really excited because I think, well, what are we going to look 30 days from now? Managing our symptoms with autoimmunity isn't about flipping a light switch. It's about building a strong foundation over time. And I know that if we can get those right pieces in place, then even though sometimes it can be slow, those fundamentals are going to continue to work for us. From time to time, I'll be talking to a patient and we'll be going through their history, and they'll mention a time where they made a particular change and it led to them feeling a bit better. I'll ask them, why they didn't continue with that strategy, or why they didn't go back to that strategy before seeking out my help. And they'll often say either, well, I was doing it and things weren't perfect for me, or maybe, yeah, it was helping me with my brain fog and joint pain, but it didn't help with my gut symptoms or my weight. And while I can totally understand both of those situations, it can be so hard when we have Hashimoto's to find things that actually work for us that when we do find those things, we want to hold on to them as much as possible and leverage them as much as possible. Nothing is going to be a quick fix or a silver bullet. So we really need to stop thinking about strategies in that way and looking for the one magical answer that's going to address all of our problems. Building our health up is more like cooking a big pot of soup. We're going to start off with some basic components that we like and make sense for our recipe. But as that soup simmers and cooks, we're going to be checking it. Maybe it needs a little bit more salt. Maybe the temperature is a bit too high. The point is, it's okay for things to not be perfect because we're going to continue to monitor and adjust, building that recipe until we get to an end product that we're happy with. And when we catalog and reflect on things using that 30-day window, it's going to help us to make consistent progress while providing us enough time to see what's being effective for us, yet not get so bogged down where we're utilizing a strategy that isn't being helpful or supportive. The last thing that I wanted to touch on are situations where our response can be even slower than normal. Sometimes patients will ask, if my TSH is higher or if my antibodies are higher, is that going to make things take longer? And while that can have an impact in terms of the time it takes to get your body much more stable, I still think that the 30-day window applies when we're trying to track changes. Remember, elevations in TSH and antibodies don't always correlate with the severity of the symptoms that someone is experiencing. So although TPO antibodies off the charts or above 2,000 can be scary, it doesn't necessarily mean that your symptoms are more severe than someone whose TPO antibodies are 500. Therefore, as long as you're implementing strategies that make sense, you should still be able to see changes in a similar time frame. Instead, the thing that I've noticed with patients who tend to take longer to respond is that their condition is very chronic in nature. So yes, of course, it takes most people years to get diagnosed with Hashimoto's, but for some people, maybe they've been dealing with this condition for 10, 20, or even 30 years. And the other thing is that their bodies tend to be extremely sensitive. Now, for anyone with autoimmunity, there is going to be a certain degree of sensitivity to things in our environment. Our immune system isn't functioning properly. With that comes a loss in tolerance, and whenever we're exposed to any type of compound in our environment, it has the capacity to trigger a reaction. But if you're someone who can only tolerate a few select foods, any sort of physical activity or errands requires you to rest for the rest of the day, and maybe it takes days or up to a week for you to recover if that exercise is more intense, you also find yourself reacting to any type of environmental allergen or chemicals. And since the diagnosis of your Hashimoto's, you've also been diagnosed with other autoimmune conditions. In these scenarios, I'm not saying it's not possible to make changes and see improvements in 30 days, but I find that it's much more challenging because it's more likely that during that time frame, we run into something that our system just can't tolerate, and it takes us a little bit longer to recover. So keep in mind that all of the strategies that we discussed today still will apply to these sensitive situations. But anytime we do have an exacerbation or flare-up, it will extend that timeline out, causing things to take a little bit longer until you start feeling better. But no matter where we're starting from, although we can see changes with Hashimoto's in a relatively short period of time, it's always going to be something that we're going to need to manage for the rest of our lives. Sometimes that can feel daunting and overwhelming to people, but health always requires lifelong management, no matter who you are or what you're dealing with. So even though it would be nice to have an endpoint on our recovery period, just like that sprained ankle, framing our expectations and goals a little bit differently can really be the key to having the success that we deserve. The important thing is If we're going to manage and optimize our health for our entire life, we need to make sure that we're doing things in a way that is specific to Hashimoto's, because the best outcomes are going to come when we provide strategies that are a fit for what your system needs. Finding those can be a challenge, but if we understand the time frame for how things change, we can add them to our health recipe and make sure that it's continuing to trend in a positive direction. But as always, feel free to share some of your thoughts in the comments. What strategies are working well for you, and how long did it take until you started to notice a change? Someone else in the community might be considering the exact same approach, and by sharing your experience, we can all help each other to have better success. If you like this video but you need more help, then I'd recommend signing up for my online course, and you can start that process by sending an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com and putting course in the subject line. Once we receive your message, my staff will help you to get scheduled for a one-on-one consultation with me to make sure that the course is a good fit for you. In my course, I'm helping women with Hashimoto's who aren't getting any help from their doctor, continuing to suffer with symptoms, and are overwhelmed and exhausted by trying to do things on their own. From there, I help my students to better understand their condition, make confident choices when it comes to nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. That way they can start making real improvements and love their lives again. The course includes 8 modules that covers the most important aspects when it comes to supporting your Hashimoto's symptoms. And there's also weekly live support calls with me. That way you can have any additional questions answered and you can be supported every step of the way. So if that's something that sounds like it might be a good fit for you, make sure to reach out as space is limited. If you'd rather keep learning on your own, then you can always watch some of the other videos and playlists here on my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook for daily strategies, tips, and informations, or you can grab either one of my free downloads, which are linked in the description box below. But that's it for this one. Thank you for watching. I hope that you found it helpful, and I hope that it helps you to continue to make positive changes. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. But my name is Dr. Bodle. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.